What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are more than just entertainment. They are a catalyst for meaningful conversation. I am Sprang, and each week we dive into movies that gear up for a new release that's coming out. So this week we are talking Deadpool and Wolverine. We're going to touch on all the X-Men movies very lightly. We're going to dive into a little bit of the Deadpool movies, and I have my wife here to join us because this isn't necessarily a kid-friendly episode. So we're glad that you've joined us. We hope that you will continue to follow us on Instagram. It is at Movies That Make You. If you're new to the channel, you can also check us on Letterboxd at I Am Sprang. You can see all of our lists. That would be the movies that make you laugh, the movies that make you cry, the movies that make you scream, and movies like this one that make you break the fourth wall. So we hope that you'll follow us there and follow us on our podcast, where you listen to podcasts, anywhere you can find them. We are there. And just give us a like, subscribe, and share with your friends. We believe that it's important for kids to hear other kids sharing about how they interact with entertainment. And like I said, it's more about diving into the morals and the things, the lessons we can learn from movies as we go along. So we hope that you'll share us along the way. Before we jump into the episode, though, I do want to give you a heads up about what we got coming up on the podcast. Next week, it's going to be Jacob, myself, and a special guest, Papa Goss, who's going to join us to talk about the movie Scream. We saw a special viewing of it, a special screening of it at a con in Las Colinas, and so we were talking about that. It's such a great movie. It was one of my, it's definitely my favorite horror movie of all time, only because it introduced me to the genre and to all these other great characters. So hope you'll join us for that. Following that, we're going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. That's actually gearing up for a new series coming out on streaming. That is a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series, so that should be fun. But we watched the 90s live action film and Mutant Mayhem to gear up for this, so we hope you'll join us for that. That one's going to be a kid edition. The 2 weeks following that, it's going to be parent editions to talk about the Alien series because Alien Romulus is coming out. And then we're going to talk about The Crow with Brandon Lee in preparation for the new Crow with Bill Skarsgård. So we hope that you'll join us for those episodes each and every week. We drop on Monday, and we just can't thank you enough for listening. And without further ado, let's get to the podcast. All right, we are back for another episode of the Movies That Make You podcast. This one's going to be the movies that make you break the fourth wall because we were talking about Deadpool and Wolverine coming out this Friday, and we're going to touch on all the X-Men movies that we can, even if it's just for a little bit, and dive deep into the Deadpool movies. But before we do that, I am Sprang, and I'm joined by my wonderful wife, Kristen.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here.
We didn't figure this would be one we could talk about with the kids because Deadpool is rated R, and it's not just a regular R. It's a pretty hard R. You know, it's
Highly inappropriate for children.
for children. Yes, it's out there, and I'm sure that there are some adults that would say it's out there for adults too. But we thought it was all in good fun and all in good humor. So before we jump into the movies, though, let's catch up. How you been? How is things going?
Things are great. We had fun on July 4th, went paddleboarding, took one of our kiddos who hasn't been paddleboarding before, and two of the others are at camp, and then the other one was with his mom. So it was interesting. It's been kind of unique having just one child here.
Especially when it's the baby of one family, the other family. That's one of the interesting things we talked about too, is how much a difference the change of bringing the families together for the two younger kids, because the two older kids know what it means to be a big brother, because they had to, as soon as the younger kid was born, they had to figure out what it was to be an older brother and deal with the fact that you've got a younger brother that's going to get things that you never got, or that's going to be in your stuff and in your space, and you're going to have to share. But it was a little bit more challenging, I think, for the younger brothers to figure out that balance. And maybe they still have some struggles with being the younger brother, or having a younger brother.
And Zeke he's still the youngest.
Yeah.
It's Colton that is now a middle child.
Right.
And Jacob too, because he was always the oldest and now he's second oldest. So I think they've worked out their dynamics though.
For sure. And I think what's really fun though is, since Colton turned 12, is he actually is trying to be, it feels like he's trying to be older. Like he's trying to get his stuff together. It feels like he's really trying hard to be 12. Because now that he's 12, he feels like it just seems like he's trying to really be on his P's and Q's.
He's a big kid now.
Yeah, he's a big kid now, so he wants to. So we went to Chili's with Grammy and D Daddy. They were here last week, and he didn't want to order off the kids menu, even though the kids menu was 12 and under. So he got a bowl of chili at Chili's, which I've never even got chili at Chili's. Have you ever gotten chili at Chili's?
No, so random.
It's completely random, but so cute and so awesome. And he ate it and he liked it. He said it was a bold flavor, but it was good. I did tell him that you got to eat it if you order it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Good luck, and he did. He ate it just fine, and it was done before I even noticed. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But everything's going good. It's just hot, so did some yard work today. Knocked that out before it got too hot, and yeah. How about you?
Yeah, it seems life is a little crazy or just busy. Nothing out of the ordinary necessarily. Just extra busy. Parents in town for a little bit. Didn't add any stress necessarily. It's just having a couple extra people in the house and kids away at camp and some not, and just kind of figuring out the rhythm of life because it's a little not a normal schedule. But yeah, going good. Life's good. No big deal,
Yeah.
We did do a fun video for work this week. My boss called and was like, "Hey, we need to do a pump it up, hype up video for our company, and I need you to come up with an idea." And so Kristen and I were sitting watching the gymnastics, and I was like, I mean, we could go for the Olympic theme, like training for the Olympics. And so he did all this research to kind of talk about like the comparisons of like training for 4 years and actually houses. People usually buy a house every 8 years. And if you throw a refinance in there, then you probably around every 4 years. So he's making all these comparisons about what it means to train your entire life for one moment, and so he's like, this is your moment. So it was a lot of fun, but we got to do some video with the working out stuff. So that was cool.
You should share it in the link.
Yeah.
It was a really solid video. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Working out's my jam, so I was super excited.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to kind of I've talked a little bit about that side of things at work. It's just not something I've necessarily been a big person that I'm not a big workout person. I've never been a big workout person, but since you got me involved in it, it's like I feel like energized by it, and I feel like I have to have it. Not have to, but I want to have that in my life. And so, recently I went to 6:15 class because
6:15 a.m.
Once the day starts, like I don't know what's going to happen. So I can't trust a noon class because I've got meetings scheduled. I can't trust an evening class because I might have stuff with the kids and I might have dinner and whatever, and you might be working. So it's just, hey, I can go every day at 6:15, and so that's what I just started doing. I've just finished my second week of that, maybe third week of that.
Super proud of you. That's commitment.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It is, and there's been a couple times where I've just gone to the evening class when I knew I could because it was tired from the weekend, or one of the days I had to pick my parents up. So I got home at like 1:30, so I just went that evening because I knew that they were here to watch the kids. So I, balance it out, but still going every day, whether it's in the morning or but definitely that morning class is just kind of, everybody asks like, do you feel energized throughout the day? And I honestly, I don't feel any different than I normally have during the day, but maybe I'm just not paying attention. But it's just, I just get to work and just start doing my thing, and then it's good. But I feel strong. I feel, good that I got my workout in the morning, but it doesn't like give me that boost of energy or whatever that I think some people get from doing that exercising.
So mine in the morning, if I do work out, which getting out of bed is the hardest, I feel more energized if I've worked out in the morning than I do at night. But I feel like I give more of my effort and 110% if I work out at noon or in the evenings. I use the gym and working out as kind of like my mental health coping. I just basically put all of my emotions and feelings and I just leave it on the floor. Not that I'm out there crying and boohooing and whatnot, but I'm just taking all the energy and just releasing it. And it's just so freeing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working out, there's a guy in the movie that we're going to talk about that's coming out this Friday that has been working out incredibly, incredibly well since the year 2000, probably 1999.
Wow.
Hugh Jackman has been playing Wolverine for 25 years.
That is insane. And he is jacked.
He is jacked. Hugh
And
Jackman.
he's older too. I mean, to be able to
He's in his 60s right now,
sustain that.
at least. I think he's in his 60s. But yeah, just looking up, the first X-Men was 2000, and he got pretty beefy for that one.
Mhm.
But like when you look at him, even in later ones, like it's just like whatever I mean, I know there's workout routines, I know there's training regimens, I know there's diets, and I know there's like supplements that they do for Hollywood actors to kind of get in shape quick, things like that they've tried and true. And so I mean, he's just continued to get even more impressive physically. And I know we'll talk about it, but I know this is a very unique thing for him to come back and do this character again. I mean,
It is grueling to the body, especially
yeah.
when to sustain that for so long. I mean, you have to be on point all the
Mhm.
time with your diet, your exercise, your sleep, all the supplements, all the things. And so
Yeah.
it's a full-time job.
It's insane. It's insane. But yeah, 2000 was the first X-Men. Let's just kind of talk through a little bit of the X-Men. We won't need deep dive on all of them, but X-Men came out in 2000. It was really kind of took the world by storm. I mean, it was a team movie. I think the main character that they focused on was Wolverine, kind of because he was an outsider, and they're trying to recruit him to be in the team of the X-Men. X-Men are already established, and so it's kind of like interesting in that respect. But it's like it's an introduction as Patrick Stewart as Professor X, and I'd only known him from Star Trek Next Generation, and I really liked him in that role. So when he was cast as Professor X, I was like, oh, it's perfect. He's bald, and he sounds smart. Like, this is perfect. And I think that was just incredible. As a first out of the gate comic book movie. The comic book movies had not been good really up until that point. But in 2000, and I think 2002-ish was Spider-Man. So I think that this was kind of the start of these can actually be good movies too, and not just be kind of quirky and all that stuff. But when we first watched X-Men, that was one that you actually liked a lot, right?
I did, and I shocked myself and you by
Mm-hmm.
enjoying it because I think with all the characters being so unique, I didn't think I would be able to relate to them. But when you find out they are, I'd say, quote, human, but they do have emotions and feelings, and they experience things that we would too. So
Mm-hmm.
it made, even though they looked funny, they
Right.
were relatable.
And I think one of the things to point out for those of you that didn't know is like the X-Men really were this kind of homage to civil rights. Professor X is like the Martin Luther King character, and then Magneto is the Malcolm X character. They both are fighting for their people in the X-Men comics. One is trying to do it by peace. One is trying to do it with violence. And so there's this sense where it's trying to kind of put into, like we've talked about before, put into a sci-fi movie, into a comic book, ideas of what it means to be different and be accepted and be like not, imprisoned, and not anything just because you're different, just because you have different skin color or different abilities or different, origins. Like, that's what the X-Men are. And it's this, and of course it's fantastical and it's comic booky, and there's time travel and all that stuff, but there really is a lot of that wrapped up into it. Even from the first movie, there actually is, like, I think it opens once we get to the adult. Well, it opens in the Nazi concentration camp with Magneto, like trying to rip off the gates to get to his parents, and as a kid, and so he's seeing this is how humans treat people. So I'm stronger than them. I could kill them all. Why not just do that? Because humans are horrible beings. And so it's just interesting that that's kind of the backdrop for X-Men, and they took it really seriously in that first one. So that's, I think, why it held its own. It resonated with people because it was grounded in something that was historical as far as the kind of the World War II stuff. So, but Wolverine, I think, in all honesty, he is the focal point of those original movies. He's the one character that you kind of keep a hold of. We get to X2, and you kind of get a whole bunch of his backstory of where he got the adamantium armor, like a skeleton, and where he got the blades. And this guy's like comes on the scene and basically tells him where he came from. Yeah. So William Stryker, Brian Cox plays William Stryker, who is basically like telling him like, I know where you came from. I know who you are. And so this kind of like this search to try and find the facility that he was made in, and all that.
Which don't
But
we all want to know where we're from?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like if you woke up one day and didn't know. I mean, it would be a like what's going on, and even to the point of where a lot of our family
Ancestry.
likes to dig into ancestry and stuff like that. It just helps us feel grounded. If we're struggling with who we are, sometimes it helps to kind of find out where we came from, and that just kind of helps solidify what we feel about ourselves and all that stuff. So yeah, and there's always this kind of back and forth between him and Cyclops, Scott Summers, James Marsden character, because they both kind of have a thing for Famke Janssen, Jean Grey. So there's this kind of love triangle kind of thing. But that's kind of one of the fun moments of that original trilogy was seeing those characters and interacting, and I thought they did a great job. But also in X2 we get a Weapon X type character, Lady Deathstrike, which was another person that had this adamantium skin. So in the final kind of attack, they actually have a one-on-one battle, and so you kind of see her. She shoots her nails out or her fingers out, and it's like blades and stuff like that. But kind of fun to kind of see things take it to another level with those characters. Yeah. Then we get to X-Men Last Stand 2006, and this was kind of like a dipping point. A lot of folks weren't a huge fan of this movie. Changed directors is part of it, but Brett Ratner takes over, and it's kind of like this story that's a very epic story within the comics, and that is the Dark Phoenix saga. And it's basically Jean Grey turns into Phoenix, and it's kind of like that journey. And so they did it here, and as we'll see in just a little bit, we won't touch on it a whole bunch, but they did it again with Sophie Turner's role as Jean Grey. But they're trying to tap into that. In the comics, it's really epic. She dies trying to save people. That happens at the end of X2, and then in X-Men: The Last Stand, the third one, she comes back, and she's not Jean Grey. She's this other character, this other kind of, she doesn't remember who she is now. She's the Dark Phoenix, so she's battling this good side, bad side. She ends up joining forces with Magneto in this one, and they have a big mutant battle. We also get Ellen Page in this one as one of the characters, who's now Elliot Page. She plays Kitty Pryde, which is going to play into something later as well. We also get our first Juggernaut in this one. And so that's played by Vinnie Jones. So that's a couple of things that it's stuff that we see later in the series that is kind of fun to kind of harken back to. But yeah, there's all of this kind of this battle between the mutants and which side is going to win out, and all that. So that's kind of X-Men Last Stand.
Yeah.
It was kind of a dip, but it's still, as far as the story goes, it's important to kind of mention it. So, and then the other piece that I think is interesting about this is because Hugh Jackman was more of a romantic comedy kind of guy, or like a musicals kind of guy. I think the first movie I ever saw him in was Kate and Leopold, where he plays Meg Ryan.
Yes, I remember that one.
He plays like a guy from the past and ends up being in the present or something.
The 1800s Britain territory. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of goofy, but
yeah. But it's like that's what he was known for. And so, and I think he was actually in another movie with Halle Berry. Halle Berry plays Storm in these original 3 X-Men movies. But it was where he played a computer hacker. John Travolta tries to hire him or kidnap him to make him do this computer hacking thing. I think Nicolas Cage is in it. Anyway, it's maybe not Nicolas Cage. That's Face Off. Never mind. But anyway, it all kind of runs together a little bit. But when he was announced as Wolverine, everybody was like, no, he'll never do it. He's too tall, because Wolverine's supposed to be like under 6 foot. He's too tall, and
he's 6'3".
He's the romantic guy. He's the nobody's gonna like him, which is hearkening back to when they cast Michael Keaton as Batman. Nobody wanted him because he's the comedy guy, he's the silly guy, he's the Mr. Mom. Like, he can't play Batman. Also, flash forward to Dark Knight in 2008. Heath Ledger can't play Joker. He's the heartthrob. He's the guy. The 10 Things I Hate About You. Like, he could never play the Joker. Like, for some reason, fandom and like culture like thinks we know better than these people that are creating it, and it doesn't always work out, right? There are times when people are miscast and characters don't come out, but those three in particular, it's like fans just eat it up once it comes out and they see what these actors did. And Wolverine is that. Wolverine is like, nobody wants to see anybody else step into those shoes, and so that's why he's played the character for 25 years.
And I was wrong. He's 55.
Okay, he's 55. Okay, that's still older than us, but not in the 60s. I guess you think about maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
probably 70s ish.
Must have been the makeup.
Yeah.
I don't know, because looking at his pictures now, he doesn't look that old. So
Yeah.
he can do a lot with makeup.
I know, it's crazy. Crazy. But since Wolverine was since he really grabbed our imagination, they ended up doing an X-Men Origins movie called X-Men Origins Wolverine. And it was basically really kind of, well, X2 did kind of comment on, hey, there's this backstory. We didn't see the backstory. We just saw maybe flashes of it. X-Men Origins was like, hey, we're going to show you like how he happened. So it actually shows him and Sabretooth, played by Liev Schreiber. They were brothers, and they fight throughout the ages because they both have this kind of gene that makes them able to live long and not get injured and not die. So they fight on like the American Wars and things like that. And then they end up in where kind of present day, and Stryker is the one that basically tells Wolverine, I can make you into a stronger person so you won't die, or things like that. So they put the adamantium around coating on his skeleton so he's invincible. And of course his X power is that he can heal really fast. So that's why he's able to do it. They do the surgery and then he heals before he dies. So they can replace his skeleton basically, which is nuts. But it was grueling, taxing on him. And then the other character, and this is why we're doing this, the other character that we see for the first time on film in X-Men Origins is Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool.
It wasn't the Green Lantern?
That was when he played Green Lantern, but that was after this.
Oh, okay.
But Deadpool, he plays Deadpool, Wade Wilson. The opening scene of X-Men, he's with a group of mercenaries. They go in, they do all this stuff. He's the merc with the mouth. He's talking trash. He's doing all the Wade Wilson stuff. And then at the end of the movie, he comes back and they've sewn his mouth shut and they've put blades in his arms instead of him having swords. And it's like the directors just didn't understand Deadpool at all. And they made him this other thing instead of being like remaining true to the comics. And fans just went nuts and crazy over that, because it's like, that's not Deadpool. What are you doing? Why are you messing with Deadpool? But that's the first time we get to Deadpool, and it's actually commented on in the Deadpool movies at the end of the second Deadpool movie we'll get to, but it comes back. So, but really wild to me. And I would say this is, as we're going to get to in the next one, this is before Marvel 2008 was when Iron Man came out. So this is all happening before that. X-Men Origins was 2009. So just after the Marvel thing. But this is when they were owned by Fox. And so the reason that's important is that they were already kind of building, they already had this kind of X-Men thing that they were doing that was this kind of
like universe. Their own world and mapping out kind of their story.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then with the next team up movie, the next X-Men movie, they go back in time and they play with a young Professor X and a young Magneto, and then building the first X-Men group back in the 70s or 60s, I think. And so it's like,
oh, the guy from Split.
Yeah, he plays James McAvoy.
Thank you.
And why that's so funny is that when they go to they're in the scene where the montage where in all these movies where they go recruit all hey, you should come, and everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. Well, they show up to Wolverine, and Hugh Jackman's sitting at a bar, and he said, the only way I'll be in the movie is if I can say the F word. And so it's PG-13, but he's able to say one. They're able to say two in a PG-13, and he says it basically "f off," and they're like, "All right, well, see you later," and so they leave. But it's basically a cameo, but it's still Wolverine in the X-Men First Class. So that means he's been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 X-Men movies. Even though that's a cameo, he's been in every X-Men movie up to that point. But that one was kind of fun because it kind of showed you like this when Professor X and Magneto were friends and trying to work together and trying to build a better world. And then towards the end of that, something happens that causes him to have to Professor X to not be able to walk anymore. And it's kind of like then they're like, hey, this is where they started, and then it's kind of end up where we kind of are more familiar with these characters, and that is like he's in a wheelchair, which we get to in the second of this kind of younger kind of flashback series that they did. But that one also had January Jones in it as Miss Frost, and Kevin Bacon as the villain in that. So she worked with Kevin Bacon in that. But I thought that was fun. I had Jennifer Lawrence also in it as Mystique, as a young Mystique, whereas we had Rebecca Romaine playing Mystique in the original. She played Mystique in this one, and it kind of shows a little bit of that. Shows a young Stryker. So it's kind of it's touching on some characters that we know, but it's kind of reintroducing them with these younger casts so they can try and take it and go a different way if they want to, kind of thing. The next one following that was actually another Wolverine movie. So we had the X-Men Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Now this one is The Wolverine, and this one tackles this kind of story of him going to Japan and trying to help a clan there. And it shows it's kind of like this. There was a comic book called The Last, like I think he was in a comic book. Wolverine was in a comic book where he was in feudal Japan, and so it's kind of borrowing from the comics a little bit there, but it's still, I think it's really, really solid story. One of the characters it introduces, unfortunately, it doesn't pay off in the end, but it's a cool character in the comics with the Silver Samurai. And this one, it's not. It's fine, but it's not great. But it's still, the movie I think is better than the original X-Men Origins Wolverine. But this one's also directed by James Mangold, who comes back and does Logan as the third of the Wolverine trilogy within these X-Men films. So solid movie. If you haven't seen it, I definitely would check it out just to kind of get that character. It's a fun kind of, because it's out of the United States, and so it's this thing there. So but at the end of the Wolverine, we get a post-credit scene, which Marvel is famously known for, but this one being done by Fox, post-credit scene, and it's old Xavier, old Magneto standing together telling Wolverine, we need your help. And so it's this kind of like, wait, what's going on? And that actually kicks off into the second of the early trilogy, like the flashback trilogy with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. It's kind of the second of that storyline. And it's the second in that series called X-Men Days of Future Past. And the reason I kind of brought up the Marvel crossover universe is this movie is you get both. You get both the young characters in the past, and you get the old characters from the original trilogy in the present or the future. And so it's this really amazing piece. It's amazing kind of crossover that who would have thought? Now in the comics, Kitty Pryde is the one who goes back in time because she has the ability to transport. But in the movies, because Wolverine is basically the main character, everybody loves him. She just kind of uses her abilities on him so that he can go back in time. So Elliot Page comes back as Kitty Pryde and is helping them in the future X-Men to send Wolverine in the past to try and save the world and the universe and the galaxy and everything. So really epic kind of story. But this is the one I think for me, he looked the most like ripped of all of them. There's one scene where he wakes up in the past, like after he, all that, and you're just like, how can a human being be that like perfect in physical form? It was just such crazy. So you get the old Mystique, the young Mystique, the old Wolverine. I'm sorry, the old Magneto, the young Magneto, and all that. It's just a really, really fun movie. I think this is probably it's definitely my favorite of the kind of the new trilogy, like the newer trilogy. But it's probably my favorite X-Men movie, just because I love the crossover and the ability of kind of bringing all those characters you loved from the last trilogy, connecting them with the characters that we fell in love with in the first film that thought, oh, that was pretty good. But now it's like, oh, now it kind of solidifies them as, okay, this is good because we're seeing them side by side, story wise, with the um, the older characters that we fell in love with. So pretty awesome movie. The last of the kind of the new trilogy was called X-Men Apocalypse. Well, it's actually not the last. So we got X-Men Apocalypse. Bryan Singer comes back. He came back for Days of Future Past. He comes back for Apocalypse. He's the director of the first two X-Men films. Has Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse, and he's basically this ancient being that's basically the first mutant, and he's been around for hundreds of years. So he comes and he's ready to destroy the world. Basically, that's his whole purpose, is to destroy the world, and that's sometimes not a great story because
what do you get out of destroying the world?
Right? Yeah. And when that's your only motivation, well, there's like, okay, that's not interesting. It's a lot more interesting when a villain is like kind of like you kind of see his point of view, like Thanos. Like, I kind of understand that it's not the best thing to do is destroy half the universe, but he's got a point, right? Or like Magneto, he's a villain because he wants to use violence to make mutants rule humans because they're the stronger species. But he's not wrong in the fact that like they're being outcast for no reason except that they are a better species, different. Yeah. So you can see their motivation. Whereas Apocalypse is just kind of, so it was a decent role, but just not the strongest. But we did get introduced to Sophie Turner in that as Jean Grey. If she hadn't been introduced already, I think she got interested in that one. And then the last of that series is Dark Phoenix, which again, trying to do that Dark Phoenix storyline, it just didn't pan out very well. So it's not a great film. That was in 2019, but that kind of closes out the kind of the new X-Men storylines. But before we got the last of that X-Men story, we got one more Wolverine movie, and that is James Mangold came back to direct Hugh Jackman in what was then the last final X-Men movie, or I'm sorry, Wolverine movie that was ever going to be, and that was Logan. And this is, I said that Days of Future Past was probably my favorite X-Men movie. Logan is definitely my favorite Wolverine movie. It's just so grounded and raw. It's rated R, and so it allows it to be a little bit more mature in its content, a little bit more like reality rawness. Like I said, in the opening scene, he's getting carjacked, and he tries to get his blades out, and they come out really slowly. And it's like he's lost some of his things. He's not healing as fast as he used to, all that stuff. So it's introduced to Daphne Keane as Laura, and she also has the same ability as Wolverine, and she also has been given blades like Wolverine out of her skin as well. And so there's a little bit of that. Patrick Stewart comes back as Charles Xavier, and he's kind of losing it mentally. And so they're trying to protect the world from him because he's having trouble controlling his psychic ability. So really incredible movie. Definitely worth your time to go back and see that. So that kind of hits on all the Wolverine movies. Which is crazy to think. We got an original X-Men trilogy with Leia. So it's just crazy to me that we got a trilogy with the original cast. We get a new trilogy with the younger cast, but also grabs a hold of that older cast again. And in the middle of all that, we get 3 Wolverine movies. So it's just that's just 9 movies that are just all part of this thing. We see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in all all 9 of them. I don't know if he's in Apocalypse, but anyway, it's just crazy to think that he's played that character that many times. So any other thoughts on X-Men before we jump on to Deadpool?
No, I thought they were very interesting, and yeah, I'd definitely watch them again, even if you are not a fantastical or comic book person. I'm not, but I tried it, and yeah, I'd recommend checking them out.
Yeah, I think we'll watch them with the boys at some point because they're solid movies. Even to this day, they hold up. And being this kind of outside of the Marvel movies,
Yeah.
it allows it to be. But that's the thing. That's the crazy thing, and why this is kind of a pivotal moment is that after all of those movies, we get Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2, which we'll talk about in just a moment. That's all Fox. So Fox has had these characters ever since they got them in the late 90s, late 20th century. They got the rights to do the first X-Men movie. So they've owned them. And then after Deadpool 2, Disney buys Fox. So now Disney and Marvel has all of the X-Men characters back in the Marvel universe again. That's why Professor X was able to show up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. He showed up as this cameo in this other world, Professor X. But this Deadpool 3, which is coming out this Friday, Deadpool and Wolverine, is the first Deadpool with Disney, Marvel, being at the producing studio. And the fact that they're letting it be R, the fact that they're letting the director and Ryan and everybody do what they did successfully for the other 2 movies is a pivotal moment for Disney because they're opening up themselves to kind of from being the families and the kiddie movies to being like, no, we're going to take these characters, we're going to be serious, we're going to do what's best for the characters, or we're going to make films for parents and adults too. So it's kind of interesting that they're allowing them to do that because you never know what Disney would do when they own it.
Well, it's kind of an untapped audience for Disney, so it'll make them money. It's broadening their fan base.
It's tracking right now. I saw this week 165 million opening weekend, which
Wow.
would be the biggest for the entire year, like
That's
this
awesome.
movie of the year. So there's just a lot of buzz. The other thing that is going on right now in Marvel is that they're not putting out great stuff. Like the last few movies have been kind of bad. I think of the post Infinity Saga movies, the only ones that we really liked are Guardians of the Galaxy. We like the Spider-Man movie. I think that's it.
Well, the TV shows.
Some of the TV shows have been good. Loki, yeah.
What was the one?
WandaVision.
No. Oh, I did like WandaVision. The one where it's the girl and she can create.
Oh yeah. Miss Marvel.
Marvel, yeah.
Yeah, that was solid. But then they did a movie with
But the movies were not great, so it's like they were doing well with the TV show.
Yeah. So one of what we're getting from the trailers and the conversation around Deadpool 3 with Deadpool and Wolverine is that he's working with the TVA, which is from Loki. It's the group that's responsible for making the perfect timeline and keeping the timeline pure. That's what happened at the end of Loki season 1 was the timeline broke off. That's why we see all the stuff in this is all these multiple timelines, and diving into multiverse and all the movies hasn't really worked well for them necessarily, but they're getting Deadpool to come in and try to fix it all. That's what it seems like the movie is, and he has to go find Wolverine, the Wolverine that saved his universe, to come and help him save the multiverse, and he gets the wrong Wolverine. So there's just like that's what we're getting from the trailers, and it's just they're going to try to fix everything, right? They're going to poke fun at all the misses that they made. It gives an opportunity to kind of wipe the slate clean and say, okay, just kind of don't think about those.
To the wayside. We're going to press on forward. I just love Ryan Reynolds in this character. I don't know if it's all scripted or if some of it is just off the cuff, but he is so hilarious in his delivery and even the way that they make his costume have expressions, even though it's like it's a costume.
It's a costume, and I think they do CG on his eyes.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, so that he's allowed, so that it does give his eyes the eye holes of the costume are able to give some of that expression that you're
Yeah.
speaking to. But yeah, I mean, it's him. And I think that he's got the mask, so his mouth is covered. So I do think that there's some jokes where they're just like, just say something and we'll do other jokes. If we come up with something better, we'll do that and have you voice it over. There are a couple of jokes I remember seeing that I felt like, oh, that was probably voiceover. But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. I mean, he comes in as Wade Wilson. He's a guy in the first Deadpool movie. He's trying to help people out, but he doesn't want to be a hero. So he's like, stop calling me a hero. I'm not going to do that. Ends up meeting the love of his life, which I think this movie came out in February. It came out Valentine's Day weekend, the year it came out. And it came out as like they had a spoof campaign or a fake campaign that was on billboards and advertisements that showed them two in the poster saying this is the greatest love story of all time. Like take your boyfriend to see this movie.
It's so appealing to women.
Yeah.
And then women get there and they're like, hold on.
Wait, what is going on?
Yeah.
But it is, I think it's one of the, honestly, there's only a few like relationships in these comic book movies that mean anything. I think Tony Hawk and Pepper Potts I'm not Tony Hawk, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts is a really good relationship that we get from the Marvel movies. But Wade Wilson and dang it, I got to say this right. Wade Wilson and Vanessa are just, it's so perfect. And it's so, their banter back and forth is so real, and they're just on the same, she's on the same wavelength as him, and she's not letting him push her around, where he's usually snarky with everybody and they just kind of, he gets to win. She doesn't let him win the arguments.
She matches him 100%.
Yeah. And I think the one of the best lines that he says when he proposes to her is, your crazy matches my crazy. Like, we're broken, we're hurting, but we recognize that in each other, and we find each other and we complete each other. We make each other better because we're together, you know.
Jerry Maguire, you complete me.
Yeah. Yeah. So he meets the love of his life. They go through the calendar of all the holidays, which is so great. If you're an adult, it's so funny and so great.
Take a moment and watch that.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
So hilarious. But then he ends up passing out, and they find out that he has cancer and that it's going to kill him in months. He doesn't want to see him go through that. So he leaves. There's this really creepy guy that says, I can heal you, I can make you better, I can make you stronger, and you don't have to die. And so he goes and basically says, okay, I'll do that. And this is one of those moments where he breaks the fourth wall, which is a Deadpool moniker. Like, he does that in the comics all the time. He's talking to you as the reader. So in the movies, he's talking to the camera. And at this point, it's before he's Deadpool, but he does say, don't make my costume green or animated, which is a slap at the Green Lantern movie you mentioned previously, because it was an animated suit, looked fake, looked CG, obviously, and fans didn't like it, and the movie didn't do great. So he was able to kind of poke fun at himself with that comment, and then basically it makes him detestable and ugly and all that stuff. The procedure that they did to try to break out his X gene made him unrecognizable, made him gross and disgusting, so he doesn't want to go back to Vanessa. So he ends up just becoming basically on a revenge tour, trying to find the guy that did this to him, and creates the costume and tries to take out all the mob as trying to get all the way through that. The other characters that we get in the first movie are
It's the shiny guy.
Colossus, who makes himself into steel. We got him in X-Men 2 and X-Men Last Stand as a side character. He wasn't a main character. But yeah, so he plays a pretty pivotal role in this movie as far as trying to take care of Wade, trying to recruit him to the X-Men. Like, you're a hero, like it's just funny to see this big guy trying to talk all nice and, you know, trying to encourage him and give him the pep talks, and he wants nothing of it, you know. It's so funny.
And then the little tweeny teen girl.
Yeah, Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Yes.
And he's like, that's a name, you know, and he even pokes fun as like, that's a long name, that's too long or whatever.
Yeah.
So, kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, the movie is interesting. I think both Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2 kind of follow this like all right, I'm going to tell you a story. Oh, let me give you the backstory, like how we got here. And it kind of follows the same rhythm of catching us up in the middle of the story and then kind of telling us. But it does a good job of kind of, you don't feel lost at all in either
Mm-mm.
of the movies.
Yeah, you can totally follow along, and it's just be prepared for ridiculousness, and it's not serious.
Exactly.
Don't take it seriously.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff though. So do you have any standouts of Deadpool 1? Standout moments besides the holidays?
Probably the opening scene.
Okay.
That one stood out to me.
Where he
Well,
takes
let's
out all the guys in the car.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all slow motion. It's,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but to the song and
Mm-hmm.
um what else? I feel like his relationship with the little old blind lady, she was so adorable, but she didn't take crap from anybody.
Yeah, so
So that
amazing.
was a lot of fun. That was a good
Blind
character.
Al is her name.
Those are
Yeah.
the main ones. I mean, the whole thing, I love it. I never thought I would love a movie like this, but I do. So,
Yeah. The one thing I did want to mention about this one is that in the closing scene was supposed to be this huge shootout, guns blazing, all this stuff, and they ran out of budget for it. And so the way that they fixed that was that they wrote it in the script that he left the guns in the cab. So they show up for the big final battle, and he forgot the guns. So it's just really clever, really clever way to get around a budget issue. Okay, yeah. I'll pause. Yeah, so I just thought that was a really clever way for the creators to get around a budget issue. Like, I'll just say he forgot the guns, and so then of course, the other guys are firing at them, but they're not firing back. So it's that kind of thing. So I did want to mention that. Deadpool 1 ends with, oh yeah, the fight, the battle happens on the final battle happens on one of the ships from. They don't say it, but it is one of the ships from Captain America: Civil War. The final battle does happen on one of the carriers from Captain America: Civil War.
yes.
It crashes. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that when he takes his mask off, for when Vanessa finds out he's alive, and he's, all this stuff at the very end, they're gonna have this makeup moment and kiss, whatever. He takes his mask off, and it's Hugh Jackman's "Sexiest Man Alive" People magazine picture that's stapled to his face. So it's this kind of, again, this joke with him and Hugh Jackman, but it's also Deadpool and Wolverine in the comics kind of have this back and forth too. So it's this perfect thing that happens, and so then they move on, and life is all good and all that stuff.
And the social media promoting this movie, it is so on point. They banter together so well and kind of poke at each other. And I think Ryan Reynolds just does such a great job. And
Mm-hmm.
Hugh Jackman's more of like, I don't know if
He's a straight man.
yeah,
He's the
he's
guy
not a
that plays it serious, but he's like, you're an idiot.
instigator. Yeah, he's not the one going
Yeah,
out there, and Deadpool's like, hey.
yeah, for sure. So then it gets to Deadpool 2. We have the opening credits is kind of like a Bond opening. It's got the song where they got Celine Dion to sing the song, and it's all this kind of fancy, like silly dancing, including a flash dance kind of thing where bullets are falling on them instead of rain. Like, it's just such a funny opening scene. But what the issue was that instigated the film is that Vanessa is killed, and so the whole time he's trying to figure out how to mend, how to be a better man for her. And so he's having these kind of pullbacks where he's being pulled into this kind of interesting, kind of almost dead kind of place, but he can't get to her and all that. So it's just kind of a interesting being there. We also get introduced to a whole team of other X-Men that he tries to hire to help them take down the bad guys. He's trying to help this other teen as well. This teen that's grown up in a home where he's been basically, I mean, it's trying to get the X gene out of this kid, right? It's this kind of therapy to
But it's torturing him.
but it's torturing him. Yeah, it's therapy to try to remove the X gene so he can be normal, and it's torturing him. And so Cable Cable is played by Josh Brolin. He comes back in time to basically take out this kid, because this kid in the future is the one that kills his family. So that's kind of his motivation. Is he's come to the present to stop this kid, and he's got one more trip home left in his time travel device. So he has to kill the kid, and then he's going to go back and see his family. Hopefully, and his wife and daughter will be alive. So he forms the X-Force, which is also an X-Men comic. That's also a comic that's, but he's like, this is just for fun. Brings all these people in, including an invisible man. And then they all die when they arrive, except for one of them. And Zazie Beetz' character, who's just lucky. Her name's Domino. She doesn't die, and this one guy that doesn't have any special abilities, he didn't die, but everybody else died. And the Visible Man lands when they parachute out, lands in the power lines and gets electrocuted, and we find out that it's Brad Pitt. The producers are like, "You getting Brad Pitt in this movie?" Yeah, we got him. We got him in the movie. Awesome. How long is he in it? Like a half second. So great. But yeah, so they're going to try to rescue the kid. Cable wants to kill the kid. Deadpool wants to save the kid. It's this whole kind of back and forth there, this conflict there. But then they end up, okay, we'll do it by your way. And then actually Deadpool gets killed, and Cable goes back in time to when they arrived to stop him from being killed, so that he can, because he believes in what Deadpool is doing, and he's trying to help the kid and not kill the kid. And then he's just like, well, I'll just hang around basically, and be, I'll hang around and help you here in the present, because he can't go back. But the end of the movie, they're able to create the thing that makes them go back in time. So then Ryan Reynolds is going to go back and fix all the things. So he goes back and shoots himself in the head when he's reading the Green Lantern script. He goes back and shoots the Deadpool from Wolverine's origins, shoots him in the head and says, "See you later," and the opening scene. So this movie came out the year after Logan did. And in Logan, Wolverine dies on a tree, on a limb, like a broken tree. So the opening scene of Deadpool 2, it's slow-mo, and it's a dead Wolverine on a stick spinning around with music playing, and then Deadpool kills himself. Says, "Oh, you go after me for the R rating. You try to just duplicate me now. You try to one-up me by dying. Well, I've got to one-up you, and I'm going to kill myself in the opening scene." So it's just this funny that he's going back at Wolverine, even in Deadpool 1 with the Hugh Jackman reference, Deadpool 2 with the Logan reference. And now they're together.
Yeah, I think that's what's just hilarious. They're my favorite little, I think it's actually the movie poster. It's like those heart necklaces where it's cracked down the middle, and you've got one character, you got Deadpool, and you've got Wolverine on the other one, and they just complete each other.
It's so great.
So I'm really excited to watch it. I don't know what the whole premise will be, but it will probably be a comedy and probably have some heart. It'll get you in the feels when you don't expect it. So yeah,
I think that's the biggest surprise for me for both of these Deadpool films, was how much, like, it's so ludicrous, so bonkers, so crazy, and then it's also so touching, so moving, so emotional in these moments. And it's just like, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that from Deadpool.
Y'all, I look over and Jonathan is just tearing up. He's got such a sensitive heart, and I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah. It's crazy, but definitely looking forward to seeing it. I'd say that if you honestly, guys, like I saw it recently, because they're now with the Marvel universe, because they're now with Disney, they have access to all of those stories and all that stuff. They have access to all the Fox movies, as far as all these characters. They can use whatever they want. It really feels like, even in just the trailer, they're referencing everything. It's just bonkers. And I know you don't have time in the next 5 days to watch every X-Men movie and every Deadpool movie and
But
every
he would
Marvel movie,
recommend it if you
but
could.
I would recommend it if you could. Like, it's that bonkers. And I told the boys a few episodes ago, we were talking about this movie being my most anticipated summer movie. And I told the boys, like, you can't watch it until you watch all the X-Men movies because you're not going to get half the references. It's just...
And you have to be 17.
And yes, for sure. So, definitely looking forward to it. Hope you guys go out and see it. Hope you guys have a blast. I know, just follow us, just check out our Instagram. We'll post about it, I'm sure. But yeah, we'll, I got anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I did say. Okay. So Jonathan or Sprang wanted to go watch the movie without me on one of the nights I was coaching. And I said, no, I think you need to wait so that we can go together. So
yeah,
I kind of
who would have
put my foot down on that. Nobody knew. Nobody
It's
knew
the
that was
most
coming.
bonkers thing ever. I love it. Of all of all of the Marvel movies, honestly, that Deadpool is the one that like grabs you because it's so great.
It's great.
I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you get the humor and you get all that stuff. I mean, it's so fun to watch it with you. So cool.
Well, thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. And guys, we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hey guys, got to say one more thing, two more things I did want to mention before we left this episode. There was a movie in 2020 called New Mutants that was following some young folks in a kind of like a mutant ward, a psychiatric ward. They were trying to keep them held there, and they broke out and stuff like that. Starred Anya Taylor-Joy and Macy Williams. But it didn't do well in theaters, and I think they wanted it to kick off a new universe or a new kind of series, but it just didn't do well. So they kind of snuck it into theaters and then got it out as fast as possible. The one other crossover point I did want to mention was that in Avengers Age of Ultron, there is a Quicksilver in that movie. At the same year that X-Men Days of Future Past came out, which also featured its own Quicksilver. And that Quicksilver makes an appearance. It's the first crossover between Disney and Fox with X-Men and Marvel. In WandaVision, the TV show that Disney put out, he comes in as her brother, but it's the other Quicksilver from the Fox universe. So it's a little off. And so that if you watch WandaVision, you get that. But I did want to point that out. Really interesting dynamic, interesting crossover point. Thanks so much for listening to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are a catalyst for meaningful conversations. We hope that you'll give us a like, a share. Let us know you were here over at our Instagram at Movies That Make You. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. So until next time, keep watching movies.